Sunday Night Football, Eagles and Falcons, and I billed this as the game of the week going into the weekend, and it didn't disappoint. This was a great game. I'm going to say it. I've been critical of Michael Vick. I've said that I wasn't sure that he was the elite quarterback that everybody was, saying that he was. And I mean, goodness, if you look at like fantasy football drafts, he was, the first quarterback coming off the board, second quarterback coming off the board in a lot of leagues. Boy, it's tough to watch that game on Sunday night and think that he merits that. There was a couple of bad interceptions, fumbles the ball. Well, I mean, the first fumble's not his fault. That's a great defensive play, but that second fumble where he gets stripped at the 50, carrying the ball like a loaf of bread. Same thing he's done his whole career. And I think what we're seeing is people are starting to game plan against him better. They're starting to say, look, we're going to make you beat us as a pocket passer. And we don't think you can do it. It's kind of netting out. I mean, St. Louis gave Philadelphia all they wanted and more with tons of injury problems in week 1. And now Atlanta, and I'll give you Atlanta's very tough at home, but Matt Ryan struggled. That Philadelphia defense might be the best defense in the league. That defense is going to win them a lot of games. But I think Michael Vick lost them that game on Sunday night. I think that he's the difference. He's the reason they lost that game. If you look at it, lots of other people did their job. LaShawn McCoy did his job. The defense certainly did their job. Deshaun Jackson, for the most part, did his job. Jeremy Maclin did his job. A lot of people did their job in that game. Michael Vick didn't get it done. Just the facts that matter. So, moving on to NCAA football. Good gracious. I'm gonna start off by saying I'm not really entirely certain how we didn't pick OU versus Florida State as the game of the week. To me, that was the game of the week. I mean, that was just an incredible game. Just one of the hardest hitting games. Just back and forth the whole time. Wow, FSU really showed me something in that game. And they might still be, a year away, Florida State, but they played Oklahoma very tough. So, that being said, looking at the storylines, and if you look at Oklahoma, we told you this game was going to come down to the Oklahoma's front seven versus the Florida State secondary. The Oklahoma defense got 6 sacks, forced 3 turnovers, knocked the starting quarterback Manuel for Florida State out of the game, held Florida State to 3 points in the first half, held them to 27 rushing yards. Now, I mean, look, there's no question watching what LSU and Alabama did this weekend. There's no question that they've got the 2 best defenses in college football. But I'll tell you what, for a team that has a high-powered offense, a quick-pace offense that keeps you guessing like Oklahoma, that defense might be doing enough to get the job done. They look really tough. And we've been telling you that. This is not the first time I've said that. The defense is what's really making the motor run in Oklahoma. But the biggest story to me in all of college football has to be, and actually just college sports, and we talked about it a lot in the last segment of the show on Friday, of the NCAA and their influence on collegiate athletics and how they're really just, it's really just a sham. I mean, it's really just a big Ponzi scheme. It's really just a bunch of unfairly paid laborers making their bosses really rich, the players being the laborers, and the university presidents and the BCS and the NCAA. They're all the ones scoring huge monetary victories out of this. And now we see a lot of stuff going on here, and we start seeing realignment. There's a lot of implications. Pittsburgh and Syracuse, and now it looks like UConn are all moving to align themselves with the ACC. Pittsburgh and Syracuse is done. UConn's right around the corner. And it looks like we're moving towards, as I see it, it looks like we're moving towards 4 super conferences. A lot of talk about Oklahoma and Texas and Oklahoma State going to the Pac-12, making that a larger conference. So you'll have what was the Pac-10 and this year's the Pac-12. That could be the Pac-16. So you have the West Coast of the Pac-16. The Big Ten now. The Big Ten now is gonna expand. You're gonna have some teams jumping ship and going to the Big Ten. So that becomes like your Midwest Conference. The ACC looks like they've got a firm stranglehold on the East Coast. So that becomes your Eastern Division. And then the SEC becomes the South. And those are your 4 super conferences. You put 16 teams in each one of those conferences in football, and you're starting to move towards what looks like a college football playoff. And, this is something that's happening a lot quicker than I think a lot of people expected. We talked about it. We said that this is a possibility. It looks like it's happening. And, one of the things that's really interesting to me in this, a couple of things that are very interesting to me in this. First of all, the NCAA's president, Mark Emmert, spoke to USA Today and made, a very telling statement. We told you in the last show, I told you the NCAA is largely just, they don't really have any real power. The only power they have is that which is granted them by the collegiate institutions that they govern. And Mark Emmert said a very telling statement. He says these are independent. He's talking about realignment. These are independent academic institutions that have enormous amounts of autonomy in everything that they do, including athletics. And we in the NCAA oversee and facilitate and provide a lot of decision making when it's appropriate. Earlier in the article, he made an even more telling statement of his role as an advisor. And his statement was, we don't have the authority to manage or approve or disapprove of any of these changes. There you go. The veil just got pulled back a little bit more. The NCAA has no authority to stop realignment. Once realignment occurs, and these 4 super conferences decide they're going to start doing things differently, they could all effectively band together. I mean, at that point, with that many academic institutions, they can just look at the NCAA and they can say, we're not playing by your rules anymore. You can take your 1-year bowl ban and stick it. But the real interesting thing about realignment to me is not the effect of college football, because make no mistake about it, college football is what's driving this. But the greater effect is of the basketball teams. And you see, you see the Big East commissioner, he's panicking. He's like, this is a bad idea. We shouldn't be realigning. Yeah, you know why? Because the Big East just lost Pitt and Syracuse, 2 of their biggest basketball powerhouses, to the ACC. So now the ACC, you're looking at North Carolina, you're looking at Duke, you're looking at Pitt, you're looking at Syracuse, you may be looking at UConn soon in the ACC. Suddenly the ACC, which has always been a very visible basketball conference, becomes the premier basketball conference in the land. It's very interesting. Very interesting seeing what's happening. So moving to the final deal here, your questions. Pulled you on Facebook, on Twitter, and a couple of questions. Great questions tonight, actually. My nemesis, Joe Hieronymus, hails from up there in the Pacific Northwest. He was wanting to talk to me about the difference between baseball and football fans. He originally posed it just as baseball versus football fans. As my sister astutely pointed out on my Facebook feed, there's an assumption that baseball fans and football fans are exclusive to their own sport. And therefore, we're working kind of in a Venn diagram, which I have no idea what a Venn diagram is, just for the record. I know who Vin Diesel is. I got that one. Vin Diesel, bad actor. God, I go see those Fast and Furious. Every single one of those Fast and Furious movies that comes out, I go see them. Back to the original question, baseball fans versus football fans. I would say, Joe, that it's not quite cut and dry because it's largely dependent upon region. I'll give you the example of St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis, Missouri touts one of the greatest baseball franchises there is in the St. Louis Cardinals. They lay claim to having the most knowledgeable baseball fans on earth. In football, they have to issue directions so that their fans know when to root and cheer for their team and when to be quiet. They just don't know how to root for football. So that's a baseball town. You look at the difference between pro football and college football. There are college football towns. In Oklahoma, the whole state is college football. They don't even consider pro football at all. It's just all college football. So you got a lot of differences. I would say generally you can expect to see a tamer crowd at baseball games, which is why things like what happened to Brian Stowe in the parking lot at Dodger Stadium on opening day this year, that's why it's so shocking. Fights like that and stuff like that, it happened at a preseason game between Oakland and San Francisco. And it's just kind of like, yeah, that's what you get at a football game. So I think they're just different crowds. I won't say that one is better than the other. I think there are just as many passionate football fans as there are baseball fans. I think football fans probably tend to be a tad more violent, but it's a more violent sport. Baseball's pastoral. It's serene. It's not as violent. So there you go. Sean Rippey, repping Springfield, Missouri, and 18 different game consoles, I guess. His first question was based on the Chiefs and how many people are jumping off that bandwagon, and at this point, rightfully so. You lose Jamal Charles. You just lost a huge chunk of your offense right there. Their defense does not look as good as Build, playing a tougher schedule than they did last year. So, yeah, they're on the downside. And his last question was whether or not anybody could catch Colt McCoy and David Green's record in college football. And what he's talking about is Colt McCoy holds the record for 45 wins in college football. David Green has 42. Right now, Boise State's Kellen Moore has 40 wins in college football. And he actually only has 2 losses. He's 40-2, which is just ridiculous. That's an unreal record in college football. Colt McCoy was 45-8. David Green was 42-10. Kellen Moore is 40-2. And if you look at his upcoming games, they are as such. Win number 41 should be Tulsa. Win number 42 to tie David Green should be Nevada. Win number 43 to pass David Green, Fresno State. Win 44 is Colorado State. Win number 45 to tie Colt McCoy is Air Force. And win number 46 to take over the all-time lead as winningest quarterback in college football is against UNLV. Those are all very winnable games if you've seen Boise State play. I would say barring some major injury, he should easily take this record. He might close out his college career with only 2 losses.